Welcome, everyone, to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, and neighbors who are caring for someone. My name is Shrid Dungel, and I work with the Ontario Caregiver Organization as a project lead within our Strategic Partnership and Innovation team. I will be your moderator for today. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the lands we are on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we call home. As an immigrant to this land, I have a deep appreciation of this place that now my family and I call home. I am continually learning the history of the land, recognizing that that history has seen immense tragedy, hardships, and injustice. However, by trying to understand that tragedy and injustice, and by standing with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, my family and I have renewed our commitment to honor this land. If you'd like to learn more about the land you're joining from, you can learn more at native-land.ca, and we'll be happy to provide that link in the chat. Next slide, please. Our webinar today is called Cultural Perspectives on Caregiving, Stories of Strength and Support. Today, the Ontario Caregiver Organization, or OCO, in collaboration with Indus Community Services and the Region of Peel Senior Services Development Division, will take a closer look at how caregiving is experienced across different cultures. You'll hear firsthand from a caregiver in the Punjabi community about their personal story and gain a deeper understanding of the cultural values and norms that shape caregiving perspectives. In this session today, we'll explore the inspiring work of Indus Community Services in supporting caregivers within their cultural context, and the vital role caregivers play in the community, in diverse communities of Ontario, with a spotlight on the Punjabi community in Peel region, illustrated through a caregiver's own journey and experience. We will also highlight a newly adapted I Am a Caregiver toolkits from OCO, which are now available for download for free. They're designed to empower and support caregivers from all backgrounds. I would now like to take a moment to introduce you to our presenters. First up, from Indus Community Services, we have Ravneet Kaur Bhatia, who is a dedicated professional in community and health services for over 12 years and currently serves as project coordinator in health promotion. She currently provides extensive support to over 214 South Asian clients who are enrolled in 7 senior wellness programs in Mississauga and in Brampton. She is a registered social service worker who has a passion for working with seniors using a culturally sensitive approach. She continues to strive in her commitment in providing inclusive, high quality, and equitable services. Welcome, Ravneet. We also have from the region of Peel, Nadia and Yasmin. Nadia Guerrero is a social worker and dementia care specialist with over 20 years of experience supporting seniors and their caregivers. Since graduating in 2005, Nadia has dedicated her career to improving the lives of those impacted by dementia. She spent a decade with the Alzheimer's Society of York Region, where she provided education, resources, and compassionate guidance to families. She then transitioned into long-term care and Senior Services Development Division, continuing her commitment to ensuring dignity and quality of life for seniors. In addition to her professional expertise, Nadia is a certified Rekai master and life coach. She integrates her clinical background with holistic practices, offering a unique approach that empowers clients and caregivers to feel supported, informed, and resilient. She is passionate about advocacy and empowerment. Nadia helps individuals and caregivers access resources, embrace self-care, and thrive in their roles. Her work reflects a deep commitment to compassion, knowledge sharing, and a holistic well-being. Welcome, Nadia. Yasmin Rafiq holds a bachelor's degree in health studies and gerontology and a master's in social work. With over 20 years of experience, she brings a strong foundation of clinical expertise and leadership in the field of aging. Yasmin is deeply passionate about supporting seniors and their caregivers, helping them navigate complex care needs while remaining in the community. She has played a key role in expanding caregiver support services, empowering families through advocacy, education, and compassionate care. Her work is rooted in the commitment to enhancing quality of life and promoting dignity for older adults and those who care for them. Welcome, Yasmin. Last but not least, our caregiver today, Mansirat Upal, is also a public health professional with a passion for community health and holistic well-being. With a background in nutrition and public health, she has worked across diverse settings supporting health promotion, chronic disease prevention, and community engagement initiatives. For the past 3 years, Mansirat has been a caregiver for her grandmother in Peel, alongside her mother and sister, which has given her a deep understanding of the rewards and challenges of caregiving within multi-generational households. She is committed to fostering greater recognition of caregivers' vital roles and to advancing supports that reflect the diverse cultural experiences of families across Ontario. Thank you so much for the presenters for being with us today. Next slide, please. I'm going to start today by talking about a project that we did as part of a collaboration with Indus and other organizations across Ontario in developing toolkits for caregivers across various diverse communities. Next slide, please. So as part of our work in understanding caregiving experiences across different cultures, the Ontario Caregiver Organization was funded to understand caregiving perspectives in various communities. What we did was we targeted communities that were disproportionately impacted by barriers to accessing caregiver supports and experienced gaps in resource availability. So we developed 11 new versions of the I Am a Caregiver toolkit, which is a toolkit that was developed by caregivers to really help someone to understand the perspectives of caregiving and understand, they are doing different activities related to caregiving and recognize that they are a caregiver. In the way that our current system is set up, recognizing that you are a caregiver and self-identifying that you are a caregiver really enables caregivers to reach out and access supports that might be beneficial to their physical and mental needs. So we conducted various community consultation sessions with 74 caregivers, Mansirat being one of them, in the community to create the adapted I Am a Caregiver toolkit in various languages, in Cantonese and Mandarin, Tamil, Tagalog, Punjabi. We created English and French resources for the 2S LGBTQ community, for the Black community, Farsi-speaking community, and the Gujarati-speaking community. All of this work was funded by the Petro-Canada Caremakers Foundation, which allowed us through these community consultations to gain new insights on what caregiving means within this equity-seeking communities as well. Next slide, please. So to really understand how we could understand caregiving in these different contexts, our main goal was to get caregivers from those communities to have community consultations in the language of choice. So we partnered with various community organizations such as Indus Community Services to have facilitators from those communities, from those organizations to have consultations in language of choice. The community consultations were broken up into various thematic areas around understanding the language and preferred terms when it comes to what it means to be a caregiver or what caregiving looks like in the communities, understanding the historical context of what caregiving looked like in their home country, versus what it looks like here, which relates to generational and gender norms of caregiving, understanding engagement norms when it comes to how those communities and those cultures engaged with healthcare providers and what that looked like and how that determined what caregiving was at, for example, a primary care setting, what caregiving looked like at a long-term care setting, and different healthcare settings where they're accessing resources. And then also understanding current needs of caregivers from those very communities as well. Next slide, please. So what we learned, there were some really key takeaways from each of these consultations. So what we did is we grouped these into for all of the different communities that we engaged with. So one of the things that we learned right from the get-go is that there was no one word that literally translated into caregiver in any of these languages, except for English. Even within the French community, for Francophone communities, there wasn't one word that kind of signified caregiving. There was also a universal common assumption across all communities that women and girls within a family setting was taking the role of the caregiver. Specifically, within the Punjabi community, we heard a direct quote that said that it was a duty as a mom, a wife, or a daughter to be a caregiver. We also learned that spirituality was very connected to caregiving across all cultures, whether it be religious spirituality or personal spirituality. It played a huge role. For example, faith was a very big part of the Punjabi community, and the term seva was used, which translates into selfless service. That was used in the Punjabi community to kind of refer to caregiving. There are a lot of intergenerational differences when it came to caregiving, specifically for those who are newer immigrants or transitional generation into Canada versus those who were born and brought up in Canada and what that looked like. This mainly played out in terms of how they were advocating for services, where transitional generation or newer immigrants were more timid in their interactions with healthcare professionals, whereas newer generation caregivers were more confident in advocating for their needs. And then which also resulted in the way that they looked at mental health and the stigma around mental health, the stigma around stress and burnout for caregivers, where transitional generation caregivers were more in the backseat when it came to addressing mental health, and were more afraid of the stigma that came with being stressed and burnt out, and saying that they were stressed and burnt out because they were negative connotations. Oh, they might not be able, they're not taking care of so and so, and they're just saying that they're stressed and they're not able to. Versus newer generation caregivers from the community who were able to advocate for their mental health needs as well. And then also another thing that we did see that connects to intergenerational and the way that there are generational differences in caregiving is that alternative healthcare practices were also very much in use within the transitional and newer immigrant families, where spiritual healing and herbal or natural medicine were a preferred method of first step to care, whereas for newer generation or those who were born and brought up in Canada were more ready to go and seek support from healthcare providers. So next slide, please. So when we looked at really the caregiving in these diverse communities, we saw that they were grouped into 4 larger thematic areas, which were around stigma, where mostly it came around difficulty to self-identify as a caregiver and seek support. In some communities, for example, in the Chinese community, they really were even angry when we really said that they needed to identify as a caregiver, where they saw the role of caregiving as a more everyday, I am the son, I'm supposed to take care of my mother or my father. So caregivers were really hesitant to kind of seek support and healthcare services because of language barriers. That's another thing that we noticed. Um, Particularly in the Asian cultures, there was a notion of the medical professional being the be all and end all solution, so they wouldn't be challenged. Whereas in newer generations, we see that they are able to advocate for that as well. And then also, like within the 2S LGBTQ community, we saw that there was a lot of historical trauma and a lack of trust within the healthcare system. So there was they wouldn't really readily open up to healthcare providers and also self-identify as a caregiver as a result as well. Which also leads me to the second point around identity, where people don't want to be identified as a caregiver. We talked about the gender where women were more likely to be seen as the caregiver, and if there was a situation where in the family there was a male who was the older sibling, the caregiving responsibilities would be passed on to the most elder female sibling. So that was something that we did see across all cultures as well. And then we talked about the intergenerational and the generational differences of caregiving within all of these different communities as well. So these were some of the things that we did learn, and we were able to adapt our toolkits to kind of fit some of these ideas. And caregivers from those very communities were very instrumental in helping us kind of shape the toolkits to fit those very communities as well. So next slide, please. So next, I would like to invite Mantira to come and speak to her experience as a caregiver within the Punjabi community, and also speak to her experience in participating in the consultation sessions to adapt the toolkit and provide insights into caregiving within the Punjabi community. Mantira?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Sherd and the Ontario Caregiver Organization for having me here today. So my name is Mansirat, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my story as a Punjabi caregiver. I'll be speaking about my caregiving journey, what caregiving looks like in the Punjabi community, and my experience with being involved with the Punjabi adaptation of the Caregiver Toolkit. So I'll start by how my caregiving journey began. So it actually began about 3 years ago when my grandmother moved in with our family. She lives with dementia and advanced Parkinson's disease, and her care needs were, and they still are, quite complex. So her move to our home shifted essentially what was a nuclear household into a caregiving household. It changed everything from our routines, our responsibilities, and the way that each of us moved throughout the day. During this time, my grandmother was also adjusting to being in a completely new country, new systems, and new ways of doing things. So for all of us, those early months were filled with overwhelm as we tried to understand what her care would look like on a day-to-day basis. So what caregiving looked like for me, at the beginning, I didn't even really think of myself as a caregiver at all. I just simply thought of myself as a granddaughter helping out, whether it was taking her to her appointments, helping her with her meals, managing medications, or even just finding activities to do together and spend time with her. It just felt like the extension of my role as family. Caregiving, more so in my mind, was what my mother was doing by bringing her mother to live with us and taking care of her. It took me a long time to see what I was doing had its own weight, responsibility, and impact of its own. And it wasn't until later, with my involvement with OCO, that I actually began identifying myself as a caregiver. So when it comes to caregiving in the Punjabi community, next slide, please. Next slide. At the core of our culture is the belief that family takes care of family. It's an expectation that your children will become your support in your older years. So it comes with a deep sense of responsibility and honor that's associated with taking care of our elders. And this means a few things. So, families will often take on a very high and complex care needs before even considering external support. There can be stigma associated with seeking help or using formal caregiving services. And at a point, caregiving becomes a shared responsibility, even if everyone doesn't consciously use those labels to identify themselves as a caregiver. And because the Punjabi culture is very collectivistic, caregiving is often seen as just something that you just do without formally naming it or even acknowledging the emotional and practical load that it carries. Next slide. So, speaking to some of the challenges that we faced as a family, was the lack of support for someone with such high care needs. Reaching out to many community services, my grandmother's needs were deemed to be too high and encouraged us to consider long-term care or other formal caregiving services instead. But culturally, this didn't align with us. We wanted to keep her at home and we wanted to preserve her sense of familiarity and dignity and provide the most enriching environment for her. Another challenge was balancing caregiving with work and responsibilities. For my mother, especially, who was the primary earner in our family at that time, getting the proper workplace accommodations was quite challenging. Caregiving in itself is like a full-time job, and there isn't enough recognition from employers for the constant coordination, emotional labor, and unpredictability that's involved. These pressures are heavy and they're challenges that I know that many other caregivers from culturally diverse communities also face. Next slide, please. So we were fortunate enough to connect with Indus Community Services, and that's where I first learned about Ontario Caregiver Organization as well, and attended the OCO consultation sessions. And those sessions were truly a turning point for me. It was actually through these sessions that I first heard the term caregiver in a way that it resonated with what I was doing. And for the first time, I gave myself that title. And that shift was important for me because once you start identifying as a caregiver, you become more open to seeking support, resources, and community. Next slide. And specifically with OCO, I was involved in being in the adaptation for the caregiver toolkit from English into Punjabi. And this project was more than just a translation. It was about culturally interpreting the toolkit. Like Shurd shared, Punjabi doesn't have a direct word that could capture the meaning of caregiver as it's understood in English. So we had to think deeply about phrasing, tone, and how to convey the concept in a way that would truly resonate with Punjabi families. I remember our discussions about choosing words that were familiar, supportive, and reflective of the lived reality of providing care in our community. And we wanted the toolkit to feel accessible but not clinical and to reflect the way that caregiving is experienced in our homes. And this adaptation, like I said, helped me personally as well, solidified my identity as a caregiver, and helped me understand my own needs as well. Next slide. For Punjabi caregivers and caregivers from many cultural communities, there can be hesitation in seeking support and seeking help. And I believe that the toolkit helps to bridge that gap. It provides language that feels relatable, guidance on how to navigate the system, and validation for the caregiver role. And it provides information that is culturally relevant and respectful. It allows us to open the door for Punjabi caregivers to recognize themselves, understand their role, and access supports without judgment or stigma. So, if there's one message that I want to leave with caregivers, it would be that you don't have to do this alone and that caregiving can be isolating and overwhelming, but recognizing that your role opens the door to peer supports, community programs, system navigations, and mental and emotional support as well. I'm grateful today for the opportunity to share my journey. I hope it resonates with the caregivers, especially those who, like me, may not have seen themselves as caregivers at first. And thank you to OCO for allowing me to share my journey today.
Thank you, Mansira. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your caregiving experiences. Really means a lot that you're here. Thank you. Okay. Next up, I would like to invite Ranveet to speak on how Indus Community Services work to provide culture-specific services to caregivers.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ravneet from Indus Community Services. Thanks to Ontario Caregiver Organization for this opportunity. Indus Community Services is an accredited not-for-profit community benefit organization that has served local communities for over 4 decades. Our professional staff of 150 plus personnel work across our 6 locations in Peel and provide services to over 30 plus programs. We strive in providing culturally appropriate services to newcomers, families, women, and seniors. Next slide, please.
Wow, seems like you have a lot of services. So tell me, Ravneet, why is it important? What should we know about your Punjabi community?
So the families in Punjabi communities take pride in keeping their elderly parents with them. It's a cultural norm that parents, grandparents, and grandkids live together even though they have different needs, different perspective of life, and different routines. There is a lack of awareness of recognizing a family member or a friend as a caregiver. Due to the united family system, the role of the caregiver is taken as granted. The family members feel obligated to take care of their sick partner or elderly parent. There is a phobia of social stigma as well. Elderly parents feel that if their kids are not taking care of them, it means they don't have good moral values. The pressure of supporting the partner or the elderly parent on your own becomes a very difficult task for the family member. They don't seek help until things are beyond their control and the quality of life cannot be maintained. The middle class financial status and working in shift work jobs adds up to the caregiver burnout. The gender role expectations also add up to making caregiving more difficult. Caregivers feel ashamed to tell others that things are not in control and they need help. In such scenarios, seeking help from others and looking for resources is taken as a weakness. Caregivers also take a lot of responsibilities that are beyond their capability and lose their self-care needs in this journey. The awareness of the role of the caregiver, the revolution of seeking help as and when needed, the linguistically appropriate resources, and the willingness to create a circle of care is very important. Ontario Caregiver Toolkit is playing a vital role by creating awareness of the role of the caregiver, providing linguistically appropriate resources and education to the caregivers. Next slide, please.
That's great to hear, Ravneet. So what should service providers or other caregivers know to best support caregivers in the Punjabi community?
It's very important to create the integrated system so that caregivers don't have to share the same details and concerns with multiple care providers, agencies, counselors, and care partners. The integrated health system should be sufficient to create a step-by-step pathway of resources that supports the caregivers as and when needed and align with the goal of the family. The service provider should be familiar with the emotional family bonding and the norm of keeping the elderly at home as much as possible. It's very important to understand the positive contributing aspects that are working well and motivating the caregivers to seek help when needed, along with taking care of themselves as well in the care journey. The caregiver self-assessment tool plays a vital role and is a great resource to avoid the burnout and create the circle of care. The feeling of guilt should also be taken care of by explaining realistic measurements of what's important in the moment and who can provide better support in the absence of the caregiver. The need of more linguistically appropriate respite care services, daycare programs, long-term care homes, and the caregiver education programs is much needed to support the community. Another important contributor to raise awareness and to make the Punjabi community self-sufficient could be partnership with the religious places and organize focus groups. There is a need of ongoing information sessions at the religious places. Next slide, please.
Great to hear that the toolkit is of use, and I agree that self-assessment part really helps people even understand what caregiving is. For a lot of them, they're probably doing some of the activities, and seeing that written down validates the caregiving journey for them as well. So can you tell me how the toolkit has been utilized in your community?
Yes, the toolkit has been utilized for creating the circle of care and availing the virtual and web resources. The resources were a great support for caregivers to discuss their concerns and find a ray of hope for their issues. The caregivers were able to share the resources with their family and friends as well. This great resource was very supportive to reduce the burnout in them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Monsieur Ravneet, for joining us today and providing your insights on how Indus is doing a fantastic job in supporting clients and caregivers in the Punjabi community.
Thank you,
Okay.
Shrid. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, I would now like to invite Yasmin and Nadia from the region of Peel to speak about how they interact with and engage diverse caregivers.
Thank you so much, Shrid. We really appreciate having the opportunity to present today. So today I'm going to be speaking to you about the Building Caregiver Capacity Collaborative Initiative, and we're also going to be talking about social prescribing pilot project that we're doing here at the Region of Peel. I'm going to start with giving you some background on the BCC, which is the Building Caregiver Capacity. So I'm just going to ask if we can go to the next slide, please. So just giving you a little bit of background, the Peel region is just over 50 years old, and it actually delivers a wide range of services. It's not a culturally specific organization, but we do have a very diverse clientele and residents that we provide services for. And in 2021, I would say it's around like the height of COVID, we found as a social worker, I found that the caregivers were expressing a need for a platform, a collaborative place where they could express what they are needing, what the service gaps are that they're noticing in the community. So this is how the Building Caregiver Capacity Collaborative was launched. And at these BCC meetings, we like to bring together our caregivers and also our service providers, funders, and community organizers in the hope to strengthen the caregiver support services and programs that are being provided. We also like to give our caregivers the opportunity to share their experiences, which can help our service providers understand and identify where the gaps are, and hopefully develop some sort of an action plan that can help address where the caregivers are finding they're not being, that they're not having the services that they need. It also is a wonderful way for our community providers to share any of the resources that they have. As we know, that's always changing. And so this is another area or another platform where we can have our service providers come and share about their resources as well. And next slide, please. So in terms of how do we have a culturally inclusive approach when we're doing the work that we do, because we do, again, we are not a culturally specific service provider, but we do have a very diverse community that we serve. And so we always come from an inclusive lens. So we're working from a culturally inclusive perspective to ensure that all caregivers feel that they're supported, respected, as well as welcome to attend all of our events. We also try our best to empower our caregivers, and that means that we are open to we're encouraging them to share about their unique experiences, and if they have any requests for culturally specific materials and resources, we want to hear that, and we do our best to provide that safe, non-judgmental environment for them to do that. We also do quite a bit of community collaborations. So we have various community providers coming to the BCC, but we've actually been lucky enough to have Indus come present, as well as Punjabi Community Health Services and various other community service programs out there. We also, with language accessibility, we do our best to provide materials that we can offer in various languages just to try to help remove any barriers. And honestly, we also lean on some of our staff. I myself speak a few different languages and have tapped into that, of course, if it can help get the messaging across to our caregivers or help the caregivers feel more comfortable. And then we've leaned on the tools that the OCO has created, because it has been incredibly helpful. And the fact that it comes in so many different languages, it's made it a lot more accessible and a lot easier for our caregivers to be able to use it. And then we are always continuously trying to improve, and we're always committed to finding and looking for new culturally appropriate services for our caregivers and clients, and inviting them to join us at the BCC whenever we find out about it. I'm going to go over to the next slide and give you a little more information of what you can expect from the BCC. So the meeting occurs every 3 months, and we always do it in the mornings from 10:30 to 12. This is a virtual meeting, so we're hoping that that is making it a little bit more accessible for all caregivers to join. And we have had various topics. So we've often had included overnight respite services. So respite is something we've heard from our caregivers that they are needing it more and more. We've also had recreational activities. We've had Region Appeal Police come and talk about frauds and scams. Some of the guests we've had, as I stated before, we've had Punjabi Community Health Services, we've had Indus, and we've had Alzheimer's Society of Peel, Jim Sweets. We've also had the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, as well as City of Mississauga. So we do our best to always keep it diverse, with a lot of different folks joining, as well as we try our best to hear what our caregivers are wanting. I'm now going to pass it on to my colleague Nadia, who's going to talk about social prescribing.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's lovely to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. So one of the things that we've been doing the last, I believe it's been 3 years, is we started a new initiative, the Social Prescribing Initiative, which is a holistic person-centered approach. And the purpose is it's used to connect caregivers, individuals with non-medical supports that help to improve their overall well-being. Recognizing that many times health concerns, whether it's physical or mental health concerns, are influenced by social, emotional, and environmental factors. And as social workers, when we're working with caregivers, one of the things that we strive to do is to try to understand their goals, their personal interests, and figure out ways to help reduce barriers and guide them towards seeking and accessing the right supports. A really nice thing about social prescribing is that it addresses social determinants such as isolation, lack of support, stress, limited access to community engagement, and it connects caregivers to meaningful and supportive community resources. And yeah, so one of the things that we really want to try to foster is helping the caregivers to feel socially connected. And by doing that, we have found that it has a positive impact in terms of reducing the strain on the healthcare system. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just an example. For the last few years, we've been able to organize a really beautiful day of wellness for our caregivers. This gives you an example of one of our social prescriptive, more of like a larger group activity. So we offer a free annual caregiver retreat. We have collaborated with the TRCA, who helps us to provide the space, the outdoor space, as well as the indoor space. And it's a beautiful day where we have various indoor and outdoor activities planned for the caregivers who attend that are really about promoting an opportunity to be in nature, grounding experiences, meditation, yoga practice, mindfulness as they walk through the woods, as well as other really nice exercises. What we do to help our caregivers be able to attend is we do offer transportation and respite support if those are barriers for them to be able to participate. So that is something that we can cover for them, as well as we provide a really beautiful lunch. And when there's a lot of leftover food, so people are able to take home food, and this also helps to address some food insecurity issues. The intention of this particular day is really to provide dignity and social connections, to allow caregivers to meet others who are in similar situations and have be able to kind of express and connect and share their shared experience of caregiving. And then what we do is we follow up with the caregivers with a survey, just kind of getting their feedback to see what is it that they liked, anything for like needs improvement, anything that they're looking at that they would like to see in the future, and then kind of building on that experience. So this is one of them. And then this gives you an idea of another social prescription, which is we have an affiliation. We collaborate with the Canadian Opera Company. We were able to be involved with their Heritage Showcase series, which was really nice from a cultural perspective. Like we got to enjoy, we were able to take identified caregivers who have this interest in this particular activity. And this is a picture of one that happened back on October. There was like a series throughout the year, quarterly. This was our Latin American Heritage Month that we got to celebrate. We were able to bring 9 caregivers to the event, and we were able to provide respite for their loved ones and transportation to be able to get them there as well. So this just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're working on and what we're really passionate about impressing for the caregivers, like looking at the whole psychosocial importance. We know that medically our health, our physical health is very important, but just as important is our emotional, psychological, mental health. And as humans, to be socially connected is vital and so important. So we're always looking at new avenues and ways of being able to provide that service to our caregivers. And I believe the next slide, there's our contact for myself and my colleague Yasmin. If you are interested in connecting, there's our contact. And that's it. So thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you so much, Yasmin and Nadia. It's great to hear that caregivers have a voice in advocating for support that they need through the Caregiver Collaborative as well. I'd like to invite all the presenters to turn on their videos, and we'll now move into the Q&A section. You know what, I'm going to start. I believe there were some questions along the way, so I'm going to start with a question. I think this might be for Mansirat and Ravneet. What does caregiving, I guess, what would happen, or what would caregiving look like if someone does not have any children? What would that look like in a family setting within your community? Either Mansirat or Ravneet can jump in.
So like when there is no kind of, children to support, I think the best will be the peer support, or like, the family, friends around you, right? And another thing, there are great programs in the community as well. Like Indus also has friendly visiting program too. Like that can help just to kind of, for the socialization and taking care of the, like some factors that can be kind of, taken care of. But the more kind of, the dependence will be on the peers and the other people around you. That I can say. Thank you.
Anything to add, Mansirat?
I think just what Ravneet said, it becomes you find your own community, you find your own family, whether that's children, relatives, or friends, neighbors around you. They become your community for support, really.
That's great to hear. On that note, you talked a lot around caregivers supporting children. So on the flip side, when a parent is a caregiver for a sick child, do they still consider that caregiving in addition to parenting within the community? Again, Ravneet and Sirat.
Yes, I think that will be the same kind of, approach if a parent is taking care of the sick child as well. Just want to kind of, not sure about the kind of, the age or like what's the condition for the children. But Indus Adult Day program is open to anybody 18 plus if they have any kind of, needs like physical impairment or anything else going on. Like there are some resources in the community that can be availed. Yes, parents also, they do need to kind of, identify that they are caregivers as well, and they need to take care of themselves as well in this journey. And if they need support, they should be able to connect and kind of, get the resources that can support them.
Amazing. There's another question that came up while you were speaking, Ravneet. Do you find there is friction or disagreement amongst family members related to finances and care of loved ones? And maybe the question will be, how would you, if there are any recommendations on that?
Yes, there will be a possibility. I think for that, it should be like, as a person, if kind of, that's my decision, we all should be kind of, making our own personal well-being, or like, you can say there is a term that's not clicking. It's like, the power of attorney, maybe for my own self-care, like who is responsible in what situation. And like, it's like you have to divide, like, this much is for me and this person is responsible, kind of, taking care of if you are not able to. I think I have answered it well. So that's all from me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravneet. And Geeta, we see your question around are there similar resources for South Asians in the York region? So Marnie has put the helpline information on there. I would definitely encourage you to call the helpline. The helpline really tries to find culturally appropriate services based on where you're calling from. So that will be a great resource. I think there was a question for Yasmin and Nadia. Do caregivers connect with each other who are part of the BCCC group between the quarterly sessions?
So I can take that one. And so our caregivers, so this the BCC is more of like an information kind of a resource sharing setup. And so we do have our presenters and our guests. And depending on the agenda, if we have a packed agenda of speakers, there isn't a whole lot of time for the caregivers to connect. But sometimes when we have a shorter agenda, the caregivers will have an opportunity to connect with each other. If they are connecting between sessions, that is something that we haven't quite facilitated ourselves. If they are getting each other's contact while they're on the call together, they're more than welcome to do that because they give each other that consent. And I think, and that has happened. And so it's not something we have facilitated between the BCC on a separate, with a separate event is that we do caregiver support groups of the caregivers that have clients that are attending our program. So that's where a lot of our caregivers do connect on a monthly basis.
Do you all offer any peer support programs? I know OCO has a peer support program that you can look into, but how about the regional PIL?
So we have tried, based off of the OCO success, we have tried, and our caregivers seem to really like being facilitated by us right now. So we have made one of our support groups. I have advertised it and marketed it as a peer one. And we did have one caregiver that stepped up and she did facilitate for a number of months, but then caregiving duties got a little heavy. And so we then took back over. So we do try. So one of our support groups is actually a peer-led one. Yeah.
Amazing. That's great to hear. FYI for everyone on the call, OCO does have a peer support program where we try and match peer mentors who are experienced caregivers themselves with caregivers who are looking for similar types of supports. So if you're looking for someone from the South Asian community who has caregiving experience around dementia care, that's something that we can try and match with someone. So again, we have that at the chat box. Please feel free to check that out as well. Another question, I think, for Ravneet and Mansurat is, how do you take care of seniors with dementia from a cultural perspective, from your cultural perspective?
So from the cultural perspective, right, it's great that Indus is having the adult day program, and their kind of, the linguistical needs, the dietary needs are taken care of according to the culture and the needs of the people. That adds really a quality of life, because people are comfortable in talking to their own language and having their own meal. Like they are still aware about those things, and they feel more comfortable about that. So I think there is kind of, the resources are available, but not everywhere. So there is a lot of need in all over Ontario for this kind of, culturally specific and linguistical specific resources, so that we can support the people with dementia in their journey. And also kind of, with all the resources and a lot of work done around this, the stigma is kind of, I will say, reducing. People know kind of, this is a condition and the support is available for them. Thank you.
Amazing. Any other questions in the chat? I see Breen has, thank you so much for your message, Breen. Any other questions anybody has? Okay, then I'll ask each of you presenters if there's anything you wish to add around how folks might be able to get in touch, or anything to add around caregiving, diverse caregiving from your organization's perspective. Maybe I'll start with Yasmin and Vision Appeal.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. So I think the first thing that comes to my mind is it's always changing. Caregiving, it's a journey, it's a process, it's changing. And I think one thing that we always want to let our caregivers know is to be very compassionate and kind to yourself as you're entering this journey. There's lots of different emotions you're going to go through, and to give yourself the okay and permission to reach out for resources and supports, because there are a ton out there, and a lot of times we just don't know where they are. I've worked in the healthcare system for over 20 years, and I'll say it's a beast to navigate. And it's amazing if you can find someone to help navigate you through that. And, all of us here are those types of people that can help you. So reach out.
Amazing. Great advice, Yasmin. Thank you. Nadia?
Yeah, I piggyback off what Yasmin has indicated. I think when you're in the caregiving role, especially when you're taking care of somebody with like some type of dementia diagnosis, I always say with this disease, it's the disease of change, and nothing ever really stays the same. So you have to really kind of be flexible and understand, the moment you think you have stability and everything's okay, something can happen, and you have to kind of be willing to go with the flow. And I've always been a very big proponent of pushing the importance of self-care. And I know in the caregiving journey, it can be very difficult to like take time for you and to put yourself in the equation. But I also say, if you fall apart, then how are you going to take care of the person, your loved one? This is why you have to also make yourself the same love and care that you extend to the person you're taking care of, to also show that to yourself. And even if it's small little pockets and moments of time where you do something that brings you joy, and that can be very individualistic based on that person's individual interests and passions, but just taking time to kind of ground, to center yourself, to breathe, to go within, and in whatever way that looks like. I think that really helps to fill the cup in order to kind of keep going on this journey. And as just going back to what Yasmin was saying, exploring different resources, connecting and finding out what your options are, because at least having information, you can at least then make the decision that works best for you. You know, when I'm working with one family, they may have their own specific goals that can be very different than another family. And I know, you know, what we try to do is we try to honor where a person's at and help them to achieve the resources and help them to get on the right course of action to attain whatever that plan of care, future care planning looks like for that individual. So remember that you count, and in, like I said, small little things that can help you feel good about yourself. Make sure that you do your best to implement that in your daily life on this journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Nadia. And I agree with you around the you know, the mental health side of things, the stress and burnout. A huge part of what we see, and not only within diverse communities. I know we're talking about diverse communities today, but I think across the board, a lot of people don't self-identify as a caregiver and don't see themselves, because they're doing so many different things, but they don't see themselves as a caregiver, so they don't know that they can seek out support. And with everything all at once, it becomes a lot, right? One of my colleagues yesterday sent a note about someone who said to her that caregiving is being like buried in a ton of feathers. Individually, the feathers might be light, but when you put it together, a ton of feathers is a lot, and all of that, it really weighs on you as an individual, right? So yeah, again, I would recommend reaching out to the OCO helpline if anybody needs any support. They're really great in connecting. Before we wrap up, any last words, Mansirat or Ravneet, around caregiving in the community in general?
Yeah, so I'll just repeat what I said before with like identifying yourself as a caregiver is like one of the biggest steps to take. It allows you to really solidify the role that you're taking on, and allows you to access the resources. And I would say especially staying connected with resources such as this one, attending the webinars, the community programs, allows you to feel not as isolated and allows you to maintain that connection with the community, providing that support while you're performing this caregiving role.
Thank you, Mansirat. Ravneet?
Yeah, as like, everybody explained, caregiving is a journey, and that can be heavy, and it will feel a lot of burden on you. So it's always kind of, great to kind of, use the self-assessment tool, make sure you are using the resources around you, taking the support as and when needed, and also attend the community, the sessions or know about the resources that can support you and your loved ones. That's it.
Thank you so much, Ravneet. Okay, I think we are at time. I'd like to thank you, all of the presenters, Mansirat, Ravneet, Yasmin, and Nadia, for sharing your story, Mansirat, and for all of the information that you all provided, and to the participants for joining us today, and for your engagement and all of your questions.